So why don't we get started? My name is Benjamin O. Welcome, guys. Probably most of y'all know me, given that I think most of the people that signed up said they were going to be watching live stream are pretty much all the people that I ask questions for. But as people kind of come in, just make sure in the comments you just say, "Hey, we from this place," and say hi to everybody. And I appreciate you guys all being here. This is a travel Q&A, my very first live stream ever. It's actually my probably the second time I've ever done anything actually live. I think I did a Facebook live once years ago when it first came out, and I stepped outside of the range of the Wi-Fi and just basically went bam, bye bye. So, all right, Laura, Keith, what's going on? How you guys doing? And how's the how the girls doing? Everybody doing okay back home? All right. So we are here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll say hi as people kind of pop in and say hi back. And but we'll dig straight into some Q&A. I'm going to do about what I've got written down from people that I talked to, friends, family, longtime supporters of the channel that I went to first. They had about 21 questions to go. So I'm going to go over those. And if there are any questions at the end, we've got some time. I'll kind of go into it. Go ahead and ask them in the comments, and I'll try and answer those to the best of my ability. But we'll go ahead and start into the 20 questions that I got going on here. So, first question, and that was kind of like the big one, is why do you travel? A lot of people ask this one. Little Elaine, of course, girl, I think this was the one you specifically asked, was also why did I decide to travel the world? So I'm going to kind of combine those two as to why do I travel and why did I decide to travel the world. Why do I travel? That can be hard to answer just because there's so much. I travel for food. I travel for beautiful vistas, beaches, mountains, hiking, meeting people, all that kind of good stuff. But I could spend probably a whole hour just podcast if I wanted to talking about why I travel. But if you were to put it into one word, I would say that one word would be curiosity. So, from the moment that we're born, all of us have like a curiosity about something. I think sometimes as we grow older, we experience more things, we get sedentary in certain lives, or we have obligations. That curiosity is still there. It's tamped down. Me, I've always been someone that's uber curious. Even when I have things that I really have to do, um, any kind of obligations that I have, I'll still have moments where if like something happens in that day, I'll be like, I really want to go over there. Like I want to see, I want to talk, I want to kind of get to know what's going on. Literally, I'm like that dog. It's like squirrel, and you just see something, and he's like, I want to see that. So that's really why I travel. Is I'm always super curious, and particularly the more I watch videos or see other people travel, I'm like, well, I want to go there. Well, that looks cool. Ooh, I want to try that. That looks delicious. So, really, curiosity is kind of the one word that would kind of sum up everything when it comes to me and my my reason for wanting to travel. So, I would say like curiosity is pretty much the one word. Why do I travel? Curiosity, just because there's so much of this world to see. Sometimes mostly good, sometimes bad, but you still experience it, and that means you're experiencing life beyond the boundaries of where you grew up or where you are currently. And that's always also, it keeps your mind fresh and your mind going. So that was the first major question, and I hope I answered that properly. Next one is going to be, this is from Little Ellen. Looking at you, girl. What makes traveling so fun for you? Ooh, almost like the first question. So many answers to that. It just honestly, it depends on what you like. But for me personally, what is so fun about traveling is number one, getting to meet new people. I always love meeting new people. I love the people that I grew up with, people I've known for years. But I'm always someone that wants to constantly be on the move. I love getting to meet new people, getting to experience things that number one I haven't experienced, but maybe what others haven't experienced. Uh, and then to go back and say, hey, you gotta try this. And they may go there and they may not have the same experience I did, but I'm still trying to be like, tell this story and be like, hey, this was really, really cool. So people, experiences. I'm a big guy for nature, so I love to go out and get out into nature, out into the wilderness, hiking on a boat, fishing, um, even just a walk through a woods somewhere, whatever country I'm in. Even here in Texas, there's a lot of areas in the lake counties where you can just walk and go get lost for a good couple of hours, and it's just that's what makes travel so fun for me is that. Also, of course, the food is always fantastic. I'm a big eater, as many people can attest to. I love eating, love having drinks, and you can always add the people flair into that whole thing as well, because it's just it. That's one of the biggest things about travel and why it's so fun is when you connect with people through adventures, through food. For me, that's the whole thing right there. It's a lot of fun. Now, the third one. This is probably the most asked question from across the board. How do you afford your travels? That is a very good question. Personally, for me, the biggest thing about affording your travels is number one, you want to travel, and you have to want to travel to wherever you want to go. And what I mean by that is, say you want to travel to, yeah, say you want to go to Paris for a week. Well, you have to go and look at how much it generally costs for a week to go to travel to Paris. And then you have to put that in your mindset as you're making money at your job, whatever you're doing, what you need to save within the amount of time that you have from that point that you decide to when you actually want to go, how much you have to save, and what you have to sacrifice to get to that. Basically, for me, how do I afford travel? Because for me, travel is my life. And when there's things in our lives, whether it's school, having kids, having pets, just any of the day-to-day stuff, whatever is important to you, if you own a business, things like that. Maybe you're trying to get a new car. If it is part of your life, and if it's something that you make your life about, you'll find a way. And that's what I do. I rarely buy new clothes. Like this shirt right here, Copenhagen, I bought at the Hard Rock Cafe in 2016 on my first trip out to basically out of the United States when I was in Denmark. And I've kept this shirt, not just for sentimental value, but it's like if you look at my closet, half my shirts are from anywhere from 2 to like 10 years ago, because my body structure hasn't changed all that much. So, yeah, how do I afford it? It's because I put everything that I make, or at least a good majority of it, into travel. Even when I put all the stuff on my travel into credit cards, a lot of what I do when I make is to put all that money back into the credit cards to clear space on the credit cards so I can use the credit cards so I can eventually get points racked up for, hotels and airline free air tickets and stuff like that. And definitely, if you guys have any questions about specific things with trips, tips and tricks when it comes to credit cards, points, all that stuff, definitely hold on to that question. Ask it later in the comments at the end of these initial questions I go through, and then I'll kind of go into that as much as I can. Honestly, if you want to ask anybody about points, particularly when it comes to hotels, you really got to. I should get my mom on this. She's not here right now, but I should get my mom because she is a points queen. I can tell you that. I'll go ahead and I'll take a question here. Actually, Aaron, you feel like you've had to sacrifice anything to travel? Oh, I guess that ties into the question that I just had. I have, yeah, I've definitely had to. Well, part of it is just having to sacrifice the things that I don't really. It does. maybe it's not even a sacrifice, but when you go out with friends, certain nights, maybe you're not, if you go out 4 or 5 nights a week, 3 of those nights you're not really getting anything. You're just sipping on water. Again, with the clothes, I don't buy a whole lot of new clothes. I only buy what's necessary, whether that's going into a travel situation or work. I buy what is absolutely necessary. There's times when I've had to sell stuff off uh, that I just didn't need anymore. Um, I'm honestly I'm almost close to a point where eventually I will probably sell most of my gaming systems. I know, shocker, because I'm a big gamer, but eventually I will be traveling full time, so I won't need those anymore. So, there are sacrifices that will be made. There are several sacrifices that I have made as well. But it is what it is, and it takes that to really get into this. I have friends that are in the YouTube space doing the travel that are doing it full time on a very minimal budget, and very minimal stuff that they're making, say from YouTube or their other side hustles. And they had to sell everything. I've seen people sell their cars, people sell their houses, everything to just go and travel. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but eventually I probably will. Probably will. All right, so let's go into next question. This is from Laura out in Pennsylvania. Laura asked, "What was your worst travel experience?" And I also had an anonymous one that was, "What was your best travel experience?" So I'm going to tie these two in together because I wasn't sure whether to answer that in a way where my worst travel experience overall, or like quit kind of like within a moment, say like, a day or something like that. Same thing with the best one. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share with you my worst overall traveling experience and my best overall like traveling experience, and then kind of the worst sort of moment or day travel and best, vice versa. Because oddly enough, the one and the other happen within each trip. So I'll start with the worst. My worst overall travel experience was Cairo, Egypt, and that was one of the last trips I did prior to the Mexico Costa Rica trip. Um, that was last winter. That was a bloody nightmare. I mean, I enjoyed some of the people, definitely enjoyed the food in Egypt. Absolutely fantastic. But getting into that country is not easy whatsoever. It is very, very hard. Um, really, because in a sense where when I got off the plane, you have to get a stamp and you have to pay for that stamp before you go to get your actual passport stamp on your passport through immigration. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go over and I go to the teller where I'm supposed to get the stamp, and he asked for cash. I was like, I don't have any cash. So tip one, if you ever go to Cairo, Egypt, pre-order some Egyptian dollars because you're going to need them right out the gate. Because everything in Cairo, Egypt, above any place else in Europe, and even more, and even some in some cases, Mexico, cash is super king in Egypt, and even in Cairo, which is the main city. And you would think you could allow for credit cards there. It doesn't happen. So I had to do that, and then of course their ATMs were down, and the teller told me that they had been down for a week. I'm like, so how am I supposed to get cash? Luckily, they had a bank branch there, so I was able to run a card, and they gave me cash. And it's so that was just getting through that. And then when I got into baggage, waiting for my baggage, one guy literally clocks me and knows that I'm a tourist. So he comes up to me offering a taxi. I'm like, sure, that's great. Let me get my bag. And he starts chatting me up and trying to tell me about his family. This was a big one throughout all of Egypt. Was I kept hearing about their families, which I'm fine with, but they're trying to tell me I have this many kids. I have this. It's like trying to get more money out of me. And I'm like, just make the sale with me, and you're fine. Don't try and keep upping the game here. So that was the thing that happened throughout the entire time in Cairo. It was very, very frustrating. It's one thing when it's at a market and people are just trying to hawk you. That's fine. It's when you're literally walking on the street, which happened to me. several times. People coming up, oh, you're from America. I love America, yada, yada, yada. And then trying to lead me down an alleyway while telling me about their family. I'm like, dude, stop. Number one, I don't have a whole lot of cash on me. This is the end of a 2-month trip. I've had very little cash left, just enough to get me through those kind of like 3.5 ish days. So I'm like, kind of leave me alone, guys. I got really nothing for you. And you really can't take credit cards because none of you guys have like a machine with you. So it was just a very, very frustrating. I even like the hotel I initially booked it was weird because it was like 3 blocks off the Nile. It was really dark, and the bottom area was sketchy, and it didn't look like that in pictures. I got up to the place where the actual hotel was. It was on a certain floor in this building that they rented out, and the place actually looked nice, but I couldn't get into the room because I could not pay in cash. So they were a hotel, even though I booked them with Booking.com, they wanted cash. So there's another tip for you guys. If Booking, Airbnb, whatever says that they take payment on site, prepare that it's cash. A lot of times it's not. Usually it's okay. But that was one time where I ran into where it was cash and it didn't state specifically. That's another thing is a lot of times on Booking, if it says they're taking the payment at the place, usually it'll say it's in cash. But this place did not put that on Booking, that it was in cash only. So that was a scenario where, like, okay, I'm out on the streets of Cairo at 10 o'clock at night, you know, several blocks away from the Nile. And I'm like, this is great. So literally, I booked it to the main street off the Nile, found like the closest kind of like nice ish kind of hotel, which I figured would take a credit card. I stayed at a place called the Kempinski Hotel. Nice hotel, very, 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 very good. But again, it was expensive. This place initially that I was going to was 4 nights for $150. The Kempinski Hotel was, after taxes and service fees and stuff like that, was like $900 for 4 nights, which I had the money for on my credit card, but I didn't want to literally pay for that much. That's not why I did it. But yeah, sometimes you live and you learn. And it was a really nice hotel and a very comfy bed. So I can't complain. End of the trip, just spoil yourself. That's what I did. But yeah, that whole time in Cairo was very, very frustrating. Now, I say that with the caveat that the best singular kind of half day-ish, because it was about 4 hours really, I think of all my travels that I've had, was that time that I filmed the video for the Giza pyramids. And if you haven't had the chance to go check that out, even if you just check out the Giza pyramid section, riding through the Giza pyramid Sahara Desert on the back of a camel was awesome. I mean, that was so, so much fun. It wasn't just because I was filming it and everything. I literally because there was times I couldn't film when you go inside the pyramid. They don't allow you. So just climbing up the pyramid, and it's a long way up. It's like 400 feet, and you're like kind of like this angle going up. You're like literally climbing, and you 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 would stand up and you hit your head. But it was so so cool going into the pyramids, riding around on a camel. Learning all the history of it. It was fascinating. I felt like Brendan Fraser's character from The Mummy, or maybe like an Indiana Jones. It was fascinating. It was really, really, really cool. So, by the way, before I get into the best um, overall experience, I see more people have joined in. Definitely say hello in the comments. I'd like to know who's here, and hope you guys are enjoying. Hope you guys are having a great night. Thanks for joining on in. So, but anyway, let's go ahead and go on to the second half of that question. And sorry, I need a little bit of water there. My best overall travel experience. That was a little bit harder. What's up, Dr. Harris? Good to see you. But yeah, it was definitely a little bit harder because I've had so many. It's like the worst was easier to do because I've only had a few bad instances, whereas or travel experiences as a whole. Best one was a little bit harder, but I would say the best overall travel experience was when I went to New Zealand, and this is back in March of 2019. That whole 3 weeks there was epic. And some of it was the biggest thing was like, of course, the people, the food. But for many of you that know me, I am a big nerd. And the biggest nerddom that I prescribe to is Lord of the Rings. Above gaming, Zelda, Assassin's Creed, Harry Potter, anime, manga, Marvel, Star Wars, all of that. I prescribe to Lord of the Rings. And I love the original trilogy. So going to a lot of these places was blew my mind. I mean, it's just I stepped off the plane in Auckland and there's this massive statue of Gimli, the dwarf from Lord of the Rings. And I'm just like, huh? I was about to cry right there. It was amazing. But New Zealand is just it's a country that's got beaches, volcanoes, jungles, islands, like tropical style islands. You can go from being 90 degrees to being 70 to 50 to 30 within like 3 hours of a drive. And you can experience four seasons in one day, depending on what time of the year it is. It's, it's the topography is amazing. Like just and there's one of the things you don't have to deal with is when you're out hiking is predators. Maybe some poisonous spiders, some stuff like that. But you don't have any major predators on New Zealand, just like Ireland and the UK. So that is actually a fascinating tidbit, by the way. If you do go out into the wilderness in New Zealand, I still sit and just be careful because it is easy to get lost out there. But it is an epic, epic island with landscapes that differ as you go. I mean, I didn't even get to the fjords and the glaciers area during that trip, but where I went was absolutely fantastic, and it is an amazing, amazing country. That said, just like with Egypt, in New Zealand, I had probably my worst individual travel experience, and that was because I was there during the March 15th, 2019 Christchurch shooting. I was in Christchurch when that happened. And that, you know, you would think here in America, we hear about mass shootings all the time, but it's such a big country. And a lot of times you're very rarely in any vicinity to an actual mass shooting. I've occasionally, like when I lived in LA, I've heard about shootings or even heard some shots fired maybe down the street, like when I lived in Mar Vista and stuff like that. But I never actually really wasn't, you know, actually affected by this in any way. Christchurch is such a small city, like particularly that central area. It's like it's the way that it's set up is it's four rectangular roads that kind of go out from each other, and that's the main district. And then they kind of spread out through the rest of kind of like the suburbs. But that main district from the furthest west to the furthest east, which is Dean's Avenue, on that fourth ring or fourth rectangle, that's maybe 4, 5 miles if you walk straight across. And I was staying in the center. And what was interesting about the whole thing was that morning I'd gotten up early and I went around the city, and it was kind of like a light rainy day, but it was still really nice to go out. And Christchurch is an amazing city. It's an interesting, unique city, and because there's like two levels to it. One is like what you see since the 2011 earthquake, because they had a massive earthquake in 2011 that killed a lot of people, and you see the ruins of that, and then you see what's been built up since. So it's like it's a city almost in transition from the ruins of the earthquake to what it is, what it will become. But it was amazing, and like botanical gardens were fantastic, particularly with the rain. It was like, the flowers had the water droplets on them. It was made for great pictures. You ever go into my Facebook albums, go into 2019 and just scroll down until you get to New Zealand, you get the Christchurch one. It's just fantastic. And then I went across Hagler Park, which is just east of the botanical gardens, and I went down Dean's Avenue and then came back, had lunch, and went to my hotel room. And basically, by the way the timeline went when I looked at it afterwards, almost at the time that I entered my hotel, it was when the shooting started. And I missed that by about an hour and a half. And I was still in the town. So, like, I went up, I took a nap, and I wake up to my mom Facebook calling me like an hour later, going, Are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, I'm asleep. I have no idea. She's like, Turn your TV on. And of course, the news starts populating the local news center there in New Zealand. And we were on lockdown for about 6, 7 hours. Luckily, I was in a hotel that had food facilities, like a restaurant. So you know, I didn't go starving or anything like that, or go hungry. But it was so surreal coming to one of the most peaceful countries in the world. A country I don't think it had a mass shooting since the 80s, maybe, if that. It's such a peaceful, you know, country that accepts all peoples. It's a country that mixes its colonial past with its native past with the Maori. Like most Kiwis, whether you're of colonial birth or Maori birth, learn the local native language. No, we don't do that here in the United States. We don't learn Native American language. And it's very peaceful. Most of the locals walk around in flip-flops and shorts half the time if they're like living in Auckland or down near the beach areas. And you're just like, how the hell is this happening right here? But it was crazy. And I remember when lockdown ended, they had sent a lot of people home, and like everybody came out and they were like walking around, but all the shops were closed. It was like a ghost town. It was really weird. It's like a scene out of a zombie film or anything like that. So, by the way, I am doing this purely on my laptop, so let me know, make sure that the sound is doing pretty well. I've tested it on Zoom calls and stuff, and this new laptop mic works pretty well. But just let me know if there's anything wonky. Otherwise, good to see everybody here. Good to see everybody here. Now that we kind of got into got the depressing stuff out of the way, let's go to the next question. All right, my brother asked, "How do you decide where to go next?" Basically, I throw out a map, take a pin, and then just like throw it at. No. That would be kind of cool. I eventually, when I do this full time, I'd love to do that. Just put a map out and just like blindfold myself, throw a dart, and then make a video of flying out there. Do maybe like a series of like 5 or 10 of those places. I don't know how expensive that might get depending on where that goes. But that would, I think, be a lot of fun. But generally, it's a mixture of, sometimes I see something, during lockdown, during COVID 2020, and even part of 2021. I was always, oh, thank you, the wildlife. Glad that the sound is working. We were all watching whatever we were watching. I was mainly YouTube, trying to keep my sanity, watching travel videos from the past. And I got a lot of great ideas out of that. A lot of it, though, it's places I've always wanted to go, just in general. And I sort of kind of put them in my mind. Okay, what's most important? Put it at the top of a list, make a list. Places I really, really want to go, and then kind of mark down the list. Also, the viability of it. So, if, say, in my winter trip of 2021, I wanted to do the Christmas festivals, I only got halfway through that because the Omicron variant happened, but I was able to do that in France and partially in Italy. Wasn't able to do that in Germany, but why did I go to Prague and continue on? Why did I continue on and go to Budapest, Hungary? Literally because I was trying to figure a line for that particular trip of where to go. But it's a mixture of making a list, also seeing what I see online and thinking, okay, I really want to do that. And then I would also say sometimes it's also when other people go places, not in video form, but I just like talk to random people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm from here and this is what we eat, this is what we do. I'm like, well, maybe that just got bumped up a few slots. So I kind of pick and choose depending on where I'm at monetarily, how much time I'm going to have, and also what do I want the thing now that I'm doing the YouTube videos. What do I want the theme of those videos to be? When I did the initial winter across Europe, it was supposed to be Christmas and then like New Year's in Budapest. So that was the theme. This past time when I was in Mexico and Costa Rica, it was like, where do you want to go during the wintertime in the if you're in the US when it's cold everywhere? Even here in Texas, we've started getting our, freeze, our Texas freezes. So where do I want to go to get away from that? Let's go to Cancun. Let's go to Veracruz, Isla Mujeres. Let's go down to Costa Rica and climb up a volcano for Christmas because you've never done that before. So those are kind of ways I pick and choose. It just kind of all depends on what's going on in my life at the time. So, next, by the way, I finally got myself a travel notebook. I've been badgered to get one of these because a lot of times I try and keep everything up in here or on my film, and sometimes you forget about stuff. So, yeah, if you're a traveler in any way, get a travel journal, and my first pages are my Q&A, which I think will be cool because I can actually go back years later, look at this, and then look at these questions, and maybe I'll have different answers for them. So, but anyway, next question is, I guess this would be tied into how to decide or when do you decide where to go? How far in advance do you plan for your trips? So, the whole kind of old overarching theme, I plan way in advance. That'll usually be 5 to 6 months out, maybe less than that. So, like, I'll kind of start thinking, particularly now that I'm doing the videos. What again? I'm trying to save up to. I'm working during the summer times or during the winter times, trying to save up to a specific purpose, and I need to know, okay, if I'm going to go here, how much money do I need for the amount of time that I want to go? So I actually have to think well in advance for that, like a season or so ahead. When it comes to planning out my actual day trips and say videos, and I think I have a question that I'll just tie into that's later on. Is like, how do I plan out what I want to do for the videos? That's usually at best a few days in advance. There might be certain things that I'll plan well in advance. Say like with my winter trip, I had planned well in advance. I wanted to go Colmar and Strasbourg and film the Christmas festivals because that was the main theme of that particular playlist and that particular trip. However, I do a lot of the stuff. I plan a few days out. Sometimes I plan the day before, and there's a lot. I always leave room for random things to happen because travel happens, and you never know whether it's weather, whether it's weather. Sorry, I'm terrible, but anyway, whether you have weather issues or train strikes. You travel Europe, you get strikes all the time, so something might cancel, and you always have to have a backup, particularly if you're on a time limit of places to go. I learned that a lot in my last trip that I did in Costa Rica because I was sort of low on funds and I didn't have the capability to travel as much as I wanted to, and I was very, very reliant on my friends who had their own jobs and whatnot. So I had to wait for their times off and everything like that. So I had to learn if I needed to get certain videos done. I'm like, okay, there was at least a couple of my Costa Rica videos. I pretty much kind of went off almost on my own. I was like, you know what? I can't get to here or here. I'm just going to go where the bus can take me within about 30 minutes and just film. Like the food tour in San Pedro, that was a last minute video. There's been a couple of them that have kind of been, even if I meant to plan to film in that particular city, sometimes everything that I wanted to do, it was closed or it wasn't happening. It was a holiday and I didn't realize it was a holiday. I ran into that in Prague. And I think Budapest a couple times because both times I decided to film was on a Friday and I was trying to hit places that were like synagogues and Jewish points in the city. And, that's closed on a Friday night because of Passover, of Seder, or if I'm there Saturday before Saturday evening. So it's like, I totally forgot about that. So you always have to be a little bit flexible. But usually I try and plan the overarching theme of the trip well in advance, several months in advance. And then the aspects of individual videos is anywhere from like a few days to the night before, and then always leaving room for interpretation. So that's kind of a answer for that one. All right, next one. Ah, this is the last question from the final of the four from Pennsylvania. Keith, best road trip so far? Now, big part of me wants to say the very first time I ever went over to Europe. Technically, those first 4 of the 5 weeks was a road trip from Copenhagen down through Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, France, Italy, back up through Germany, back to Copenhagen. That was epic. However, the thing was, we kept stopping at different places for long enough times where it's a mix of a road trip and mm, I don't know. It was a road trip, but I didn't count it so much as so. Plus, my favorite road trip anyway was when I moved from Virginia to Las Vegas in 2014, and I took the northern route. So we left Virginia, went through West Virginia up to Ohio, visited my grandparents in Cambridge, or they were in Aaron. Was it Zane or Zion? It's just outside of Cambridge, Ohio. But anyway, visited them, visited my uncle, aunt and uncle in Akron, and then we went up to Chicago. And that was my first time in Chicago. I'd never been to Chicago, and my mom's from Chicago or Waukegan area, just north of Chicago. So we went there, got to see my aunt Marjorie, got to experience Chicago back in 2014. We were there for 4th of July. It was epic. Oh, Lore City. That's right, Aaron. Lore City. Very tiny little. You could just pass through it and not even know. I don't even think it has a stoplight, or at least it didn't back then. But anyway, Chicago was great. Had my Chicago Italian beef sandwich for the first time. Chicago deep dish pizza at an actual place. It was awesome. And then we went up and went to Minnesota, through Wisconsin to Minnesota. Had my first, when we were stopped in Wisconsin, I had my first like true cheese curds experience. Epic. Minnesota, the stories out of just basically 3 days there just keep me rolling every time I'm with my friend Chelsea and Ryan, who now live in Virginia, ironically. But they were in Minnesota at the time, and this is at Gull Lake, so it's about 2.5, 3 hours north of Minneapolis. Beautiful area, and Gull Lake is fantastic. But we had so much fun, and including basically me and Ryan, not my brother Ryan, but my friend Ryan, flipping a canoe in the lake. And then somehow, I don't know how he did this, he hooked his own fishing pole to his foot. There's a whole story behind that. There's a lot of laughs, a lot of fun. And then that's boys in their canoes after about 3 or 4 whiskey sours. Yeah, a lot of shenanigans. And then just driving across North Dakota, Montana. People think of those areas as like flyover states. And yeah, in North Dakota, there's not much to see, but during the winter or during the summertime, all the fields are green. And you have all the corn that like hasn't fully grown out, so everything is green, lush. It's beautiful. Um, and then you, of course, you get to Montana, and Montana. Once you get to central and western Montana, it's God's country up there. You drive through that area, it's amazing. Like some of the mountains around Lone Mountain near Big Sky, and places like that around the west end with the Rockies. Some of those are still semi snow capped. Like Montana is just one of my favorite states. Absolutely fantastic. And we drove through that little slither of Idaho that you passed through. Went to Washington. And I think 2014. I think this was this was before Aaron, before you were there. But my brothers were living up there. They had left Virginia before me, and they were living on their own up in Washington. So Michael and James, I visited them, stayed with them a couple of nights while Mom went and stayed with one of her friends. Gotcha. You moved up there in 2015. Yeah. A couple of their friends, or a couple of her friends she stayed with. So, and then we met back up and drove down through Oregon to California. Stayed with my dad for a couple of nights. Went to the winery, all that kind of stuff, and then L.A. Met up with friends, met up with family then, and then of course ended up in Vegas. So that to me was my most fun road trip I've ever done, from Virginia to Vegas going the northern route, and I highly recommend that, or anything across this country. Honestly, you ever do a road trip, this country is great for road trips. It sucks doing it by yourself because it takes a long time. It's usually nice to have a secondary driver at bare minimum, but this country is great for road trips. Whether you do the historical routes like 66, take non-toll roads, which kind of gets you into a little bit more backcountry when you're going up through the Northeast because all the major highways are toll roads nowadays. You get to see a lot, but I do highly recommend it. So that was your answer, Keith. Best road trip so far was from Virginia to Vegas. So, all right. This one is from my friend Chelsea, and she asked for the best coastal place I have so far visited. And I automatically thought beach. And then I thought about it and I asked her, I was like, you realize there's a lot of places coastal that are not beaches per se that I'd say are just as good, if not better. I mean, if we're talking beach, the best beach I think I've ever been to was Isla Mujeres. Some of the beaches off Isla Mujeres or Manuel Antonio in Costa Rica. Probably the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to. But if we're talking coastline, because I'm not necessarily the biggest beach person, shall we say, I like a lot of like that rugged coastline. That's why I spent the last few summers up in Maine. Because I love that rugged, rocky coastline and kind of like that cool, crisp Atlantic breeze that comes off it. So Maine would be one, but honestly, the best coastal place I've ever been to is probably the Cliffs of Moher. And you think, well, that's a big cliff, but yet technically you're on the coast. And the views, the pictures, if you've ever seen pictures or videos of the Cliffs of Moher, you know why it's so famous. Why it is the second most visited place in Ireland outside of the Guinness factory. It's amazing. It is epic. And particularly if you take the time. This last video that I did when I take you to the Cliffs of Moher and Galway, I only did like some of it. It was very, very windy that day. Like we were getting blown. my stepmom just was almost getting blown over. It was, we were all struggling just to get up the hill going into the wind. It was nuts. But when I was there in 2018 with my brother Michael, there was a lot more that we were able to do. And we spent like 3-ish hours out there, 3.5 hours maybe, and had an absolute blast. And it's just that those cliffs are amazing. That whole coastal line, the Wild Atlantic Way in Ireland is. But I mean, I haven't been to the fjords yet in either Norway, Sweden, or in New Zealand. So I'll have to get there. But yeah, that western coast of Ireland, particularly around the Cliffs of Moher, is fantastic. So, but yeah, great trip. Yeah. Oh, you guys are doing part of that road trip to visit a friend from Colorado this summer. Have fun with that. Anything going through the Rockies is absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite places to go through. That and the Smokies if you get down to North Carolina and Virginia, going through the Shenandoahs, coming down the Blue Ridge Parkway. You do that during the fall time. Oh, some of the best colors you'll ever see. All right, next particular question. What makes you choose the countries you visit? Is it because you've always wanted to go there, or have you gotten inspiration from other vloggers? I think I've semi-answered this, but to delve deeper into it, partly when it comes to the vloggers. The whole Mexico trip, because this particular winter, it was supposed to be a shorter trip of about a month, and it was going to be Japan. However, at the time when I was still planning in midsummer, Japan had not yet opened up fully. Technically, there's still a lot of restrictions there, but it had not opened up to the point where I could go there with no issues of I think for the longest time, if you went to Japan, you actually had to sign on to a tour, and then you only went where they took you. I don't want to do that. That's not what my channel's about. Is just going an entire trip on a tour? No. Plus, I don't have the money for that. Those tours are expensive. So I basically just scrapped all of that, and that's the second time I've scrapped Japan because of COVID. And we went to Mexico. And the reason I went to Mexico was because I watched all these videos from a couple of YouTubers called the Country Collectors. There are a couple. I think Heidi is the girl. She's from the Midwest, and I forget where Adam's from. I think he's from the East Coast, New Jersey, I believe. But anyway, they started their channel right around the time I did in 2021, but they were smart enough to start it in the winter of 2021, maybe even 2020. I'm trying to remember when their first video came out. But they started in Mexico and they took off. Like my channel's still kind of like going. They took off and they inspired me to want to go to Mexico because I saw how much culture and vibrancy there is. With the media and the news here on either end of the spectrum, they talk about Mexico. It's all about cartels and gangs and wars, and yeah, stuff like that happens. But it's a huge country with a massive population. There's so many areas around there where you don't really have a lot of problems. I know certain issues are popping up right now in certain areas like Cancun, Playa. Like the cartels are moving in hard. So there is like a travel advisory, but at the time I went, there really wasn't. And that whole time in Mexico, I never really felt unsafe. There was one instance when we were staying in the hotel zone in Cancun. I was asleep. I guess I guess mom had heard some gunshots on the beach, and there were some cops early morning, kind of casing a scene. But outside of that, my whole trip through Mexico was amazing, and it would never have probably happened to that extent that I did because I did a full 5 weeks. I did like 38 days in Mexico if it wasn't for the Country Collectors. So I do highly recommend if you are ever thinking about going to Mexico. They have dozens of videos about Mexico, and it's almost every state. I think they hit about like 22 some odd states. It's definitely 20 plus states, and there's only 32 states in Mexico. And they hit a lot of areas, and they delve deep. They delve a lot deeper. Watch my videos for what I did, which was basically from Playa, Cancun, all the way across the Yucatan, then up through Veracruz, and then to Mexico City. But they definitely go further into depth. So I'll leave links in the descriptions later on, once this video uploads fully after the live, and you guys can check that out. So. All right. How far in advance do you research next video? Okay, we already answered that. Why did you start YouTube? Oh, the big question. Well, after a lot of badgering from some certain friends, family members, and particularly my mom, you're like, you're traveling all this stuff, but you don't really record anything. Kind of that's why. The pandemic is what really hit because I spent so much time at that point watching all of these travel videos, and I was just like, there's a lot of good creators out there, but there's so many out there that I'm just like, it's not what I wanted. It might be great, like 4K walks through a city, and that's really cool to kind of see that, but there's no context to it when it comes to there's no talking, there's no explaining this and this. And I'm a guy that I enjoy the Anthony Bourdains, I enjoy the Rick Steves kind of videos when it comes to traveling, and I wasn't getting enough of that. And there's sometimes a lot of people go to places that maybe I've even been to. I'm like, well, you missed that and you missed that. Not real thinking that they're going after the big name stuff. And while I do showcase a lot of big name stuff, you watch my Paris video. The Eiffel Tower is literally in it for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. not a lot. Like I explore, you know, the small areas. Yeah, I go up to Sakakura, but it's like I'm in the 20th district, and the there's this little Asian restaurant. I add in like this small little restaurant that my mom and I went to when we did our first trip through Europe. We stopped in Paris and we went to this small little restaurant along Rue Saint Jacques, La Viadanche, and got to know the owner. And then when I came through, I was like, "Hey, can I film here?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we filmed the dinner there, and it was delicious. It was absolutely fantastic. And it's like it's a small little place that doesn't get too much except for local business. So I don't know. I wanted to get out there and showcase places that I kind of liked. Sometimes a lot of off the beaten path places. I think also part of it was because of the pandemic. As places were starting to open up, the world was starting to slowly open up again. I'd gotten my vaccine so I could travel, but I'd seen so many of my friends and even family members that, even after they got their vaccine shots and stuff like that, and everybody in the immediate vicinity was protected, still kind of afraid to travel. And it's understandable with everything going on. I was like, maybe if I can go out there and show that, it's okay. Take your precautions. It's okay. I think that's kind of also another reason I started it as well. I was like, let's try and showcase people. It's all right to go out again. It's okay. So I think a mixture of all that was why I started YouTube. So I had actually tried a travel blog on back when Facebook had notes. Everybody remember when Facebook had notes? I tried that my first trip, but that was so exhausting that like typing at like 10, 11 o'clock at night for like 2, 3 hours and adding pictures and stuff and then uploading. Cause I almost like, I was trying for the first week or so, I did like a whole every day. And I was just like, this is exhausting. So it's actually easier to film and then later go into post production and do that later instead of every night. Da, 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 da. So yeah. All right. Next, the questions originally asked. Ooh, this is a good one. Has anything unexpected ever occurred while filming that you did not get in camera? All the damn time. All the time when I'm filming. Because I have a GoPro and I have a smartphone. Or before, I was shooting with my Canon EOS M50. Now, I carry extra batteries with me, but when you're out and about for 7, 8 hours, maybe even 12, depending on where you're traveling to, you don't always have access to enough external batteries to continuously charge everything. And it becomes hard to really kind of stop when you're at lunch, half an hour charging, and you're trying to remember, and you're filming, and you're doing this, and you're doing that. You run out of battery sometimes when you keep your cameras on all the time. And things, particularly like this GoPro, a lot of times takes 5, 10, sometimes seconds to fully load up, get ready, and then you can shoot. Now it does have a auto shoot where you just press this button and it'll start to film, but it that even still takes 3 seconds. And a lot of times there's certain things that you do miss, particularly say like animals that are like when I was in Costa Rica, I missed a few animals at the La Paz that were not in the cages, that were wild right in the jungle. I missed those because I was like, turn on, turn on, turn on, and then they already scampered off. I'm like, damn it. Or a video you guys haven't even seen, which will coming out next Sunday. By the way, for those of you that have been following my channel, know that I usually post on Saturday mornings. It is now moving to Sunday mornings, just so you guys know. But it's the Sherwood Forest Fair, so it was a Renaissance fair, and they were doing a jousting. And I got the first joust turn, and then they were supposed to do 4. And then the second one, I was like, okay, for this route, I'm gonna do with my phone. I have like a cinematic pan, so it kind of gives me almost like a semi slow motion version, and it's gonna look really cool. But I was focused so much on that, I didn't press the play again on the GoPro, and I missed that they hit. And the other night that went out the frame that way, because I was following this way, actually fell off the horse. So I actually missed the fall. You'll actually see it where the clip it'll turn and you'll kind of see him fall back, but you don't see him fall off the horse because I'm going this way. And then I look and I'm like, damn it, I missed the fall off the horse, which would have been much more epic. Even if it was from away, I still would have gotten something because the GoPro can only zoom in to a certain extent, whereas your phones or even other cameras can zoom in a little bit more. But I that's just an example, but it happens all the time, all the time. Even like another thing with this GoPro, you'll start it automatically and it'll just freeze, or it'll be filming and then it'll freeze in the film, and then you gotta take it off, open it up, take the battery out, put it back in. These are fantastic, but there's certain parts about them. just they, it's frustrating sometimes. Sometimes it's frustrating. Cameras, technology. Anyway, okay. Oh, this is from the country collectors themselves. They did ask me to tell you guys about how do I pack for my trips. Oh, I'm sure many of you guys have this question in your mind. Okay, how do you pack for your trips? Well, that kind of depends on what you are going for. And generally, me, particularly now that I'm doing the camera, I always have a backpack of some sorts. This is kind of like the day backpack. When I'm actually traveling from place to place, this will also have all my equipment, including my computer and everything that I generally will leave in the room when I go out for the day. But this is a day backpack that I'll always have some kind of cover wear for rain, or if it's colder, extra layers, stuff like that. My camera, and then I generally have a suitcase, like a rolly suitcase that has full on lock on it. Yeah, it's buried under the bed. But anyway, that's all I personally need. When you are traveling, figure out what it is that you want to do. Figure out if you also want to take anything home. I generally don't buy a lot of um, souvenirs, well, either for myself or for other people, literally just because I pack everything that I want for my trip, specifically for that trip, and that is all. It's all I do. But it just kind of all depends. So I would always recommend number one, having whatever luggage you have, get little locks or have one of those suitcases that has the code locks on it. It just helps with security reasons. Um, if you are traveling to certain places, whether Europe or particularly you get to, I haven't been there myself, but South Pacific Asia, I might actually just switch to one big backpack and have like a day backpack folded up because there's a lot of areas, even since I've gotten that rolly suitcase, where you're on cobble streets and your things just like I'm surprised the wheels still exist on that thing because I would just go through streets and then go bah, 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 bah. And literally it does look slightly torn up on the wheels, but they're still good enough for me to at least get a couple more travels out of that. But yeah, I would definitely just pack what you need: clothes, health amenities, whatever, medications, things like that. If you're filming, definitely have like a day backpack. I always recommend having a day backpack anyway. Like if you're going to be walking around, even if it's around the city, you don't want to constantly be stopping and buying waters if you don't have to. Just get whatever waters you get from your store. Get the big ones from the grocery market because it's a lot cheaper than going to like a stand or going to like a vending machine or gas station or wherever. So get them from the local store. Get the big 1 liters or whatnot. Just carry that with you. You'll be good on water for the trip. So I always say if you pack for what you need for that particular trip and take into account whether or not you want to do souvenirs and then leave enough room for that. Unless, of course, if you want to buy another luggage and then send it home, but that gets expensive. Ask my mother or Katie, my friend, or anybody else that I've traveled with. Anyway, okay, next we're getting close to the end of the major questions, and then I've seen a couple already questions that have already been asked, and I'll see if you guys have any other questions outside of that. Oh, this is from Mason. How do I practice safety? Most dangerous situations you've been in? Well, I guess technically I've answered that secondary question. Most dangerous situations I've been in. I was in Christchurch during the middle of a major shooting. So that's one. I'm trying to think of dangerous. Most of the situations I would consider somewhat dangerous that I've been in have been kind of because of me. I remember when I was on Isle of Capri, I decided to go. I came up the main road to go see Roman ruins up at the top of this mountain, and then I decided to take the nature trail back. And this is, of course, after it had rained, and then I was at the time wearing Vans, which were not very. They're not hiking shoes whatsoever. Don't wear Vans when you go out hiking. And it was muddy, and I slipped, and luckily grabbed the post of the fence. Otherwise, I might have slipped and went all the way down into the ocean, which is about 200 feet down. Yeah. So a lot of my dangerous situations is because I'm like, I want to try that, and I was like, then that might not have been a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to stuff like that, but I have had a couple of instances where someone has tried to pickpocket me. So you have to be careful with that because you never know how desperate someone might be. Luckily, both times it was someone just trying to reach in. One of them was really weird instance when I was in Florence. I was coming back from a karaoke bar. I was heading back home. And see, ever since I started traveling internationally, I bought myself let me grab it real quick. I bought myself a wallet with a chain that is hooked to my belt buckle. And people have always kind of giggled at me here in the States about that. They're like, "Oh, you trying to look so cool having a chain coming out the pants?" No, because I don't want to have two wallets, one for the US and then one for here, or one for when I travel. But also, that chain has actually saved my wallet because someone grabs it and then all of a sudden it comes out and it's chained up. It's not going anywhere. That's happened twice. And one of them was in Florence because this guy, it was a group, they were coming at me and he was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey." And he like went to go this and I was like, "Oh, all right, cool." So basically we both, dapping up or something like that. And then he was like starting to dance, and I was like starting to dance, and we like kind of locked legs, and we were going like this. And all of a sudden, I feel my wallet coming out. He had reached down with the other arm and was trying to pull the wallet. And I was like, "Hey, hey, hey!" And he's like, "Oh, oh, oh, oh!" I was like, "What just happened?" But yeah, I mean, when it comes to safety, take precautions. Look into what happens. You can look at crime statistics, stuff like that. Never let it keep you from traveling, but just always be self-aware. My biggest thing is number one, if you are particularly going to go at night, that's where a lot of the crimes happen. If you're going to go at night as a solo traveler, I recommend not solo traveling if you're going to constantly be out at night. If you're going to constantly be out at night, solo traveling, having a good time, bars, clubs, whatever. Number one, do not get over intoxicated. I don't recommend getting over intoxicated at all anyway. But if you're trying to maybe you want to have some fun, or just get silly, never do it when you're solo traveling. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea for anyone. But I know I've had this question as kind of a tie on from more than several females, of course, that have asked me about traveling. Don't do it as a female. I've heard enough stories. It leads to other issues and problems that I don't really need to go into, but it's not good. But you just always want to be self-aware, be aware of how you get home, whether that's with Google Maps or you remember your route, whatever. And also when you're in a place, this is something I just learned, from having a military mom, is always know where your exits are. Never plan for anything to happen, but always just be prepared. And spatial awareness is your biggest thing. Is just to make sure you're aware of everything going on around you and don't get too drunk. That's my biggest thing when it comes to safety, particularly at nighttime. During the daytime, you're usually aware anyway. Hopefully, you're not stupid and too drunk during the day already. I mean, that's a little early, unless you're on a beach in Playa del Carmen and Cancun. I kind of understand it, but At least it'll be an early night. You'll be in bed before nighttime. So, maybe it's safe. But just kind of like I said, always spatial awareness. Um, always have an in, always have an out. And if you can, meet up with people and become friends. That's the biggest thing. If you become friends with a group, particularly if you're a solo traveler, and you make friends and they let you join you, you're usually safe. You're fine. Oh, another big tip. If you need to take money out of an ATM, always do it during the day. And if you can, go into an actual bank where the ATMs are in there. Never do it at night and never do it out in along the walls, those ATMs on the side of the walls of buildings or whatnot. I've had a couple friends tell me about their incidences in Paris when it comes to that. Yeah, so that's an easy way to get robbed. So always, if you're taking money out of an ATM, daytime inside a bank. So, all right, let's get the last couple questions, a few questions out the way. Oh, place that has the most bang for its buck. That's from friend Maddie. Best bang for the buck that I've been to so far, because I have not been to the South Pacific, and I've heard places like Cambodia, Thailand, things like that are some of the best that I've been to. It's either Mexico, which I did in this last trip, or if you go to Europe, I would say Montenegro. Even though they're on the euro, a lot of things are super cheap in Montenegro. Renting a car was cheap when we were there. Uh, very few of my Airbnbs were above $30, if that. And then I would say if you're still in Europe, yeah, so kind of like that whole Balkans region is pretty cheap. That would be those, Montenegro, Balkans, Serbia, even places like Hungary, Czech, Prague was for a major city was relatively cheap. Like our Airbnb was, I think, 45-50 bucks split between two of us. It was a really nice room, and it was kind of a nice, safe area. And most of our dinners didn't cost more than you know, 15 bucks a person, like for a full meal, like 20 bucks. Um, and if you're just getting stuff off the street, a euro, 2 euros. So that's those are kind of like the places that I've been to that are relatively cheap. Um, Nobody asked this so far, but I will also tie on what is the most expensive. Number one would be London. Definitely. Just London is expensive as all hell. Cairo, Egypt can be expensive. It can be cheap. It can be expensive. Just depends on not even taking in getting scammed or anything like that. If you drink in Cairo, because it's a Muslim country, I think that's why. There's more of a tax on alcohol. So, like a Jack Daniels on the rocks could cost you 15 to 20 bucks in Cairo. So, but that's just if you drink. Like if you go to local vendors in Cairo, it's pretty cheap. But yeah, I would say London. For me, Cairo is expensive. Paris, of course, all the big capitals in Europe, on the Western countries. Outside of Spain, Spain's actually relatively cheap when you think about a Western country, as is Lisbon and Portugal. But Germany, France, England, London, Ireland, Dublin. There's certain parts of Ireland it's not too expensive, but definitely Dublin is very, very expensive. And New Zealand. New Zealand can get expensive as well. All right. Best food and drinks you've had. And I also have down here, Bobby Ray wants to know craziest exotic thing you've eaten. I also see, so I'm going to tie all this together. So, best place. So, the best overall cuisine while traveling I've had is Italian. I've been to a lot. It's hard to really pick from where I've been. When it comes to freshness and seafood, New Zealand's amazing. Denmark's amazing. Coastal areas of Ireland are amazing. Obviously, French food gastronomy is fantastic. I would say, though, In Spain, I love tapas. But if I'm talking pure food that I've had in its own country, definitely Italian. And partially because there's so much more to Italian food than what we have here in the United States. The United States, we have maybe a half a dozen different pastas, maybe about half a dozen different sauces that we really ever see. Lasagna, you know, even like the best of the local Italian places. There's one here in Round Rock called Gino's Vinos, which does really good. It's not like what's going on, Adam and Heidi? How you guys doing? Uh, it's not like Italy when you're in Italy. When you're in Italy, the food is so good, and there's like 20 different regions when it comes to food in Italy. Like if you're in Venice or anywhere along a lot of the coastal areas, it's all seafood. It's fantastic. And if you're in Milan, it's risotto, Milanese. You have in Verona, there's a unique dish called I'll never forget. It's called pasta sada de caval. If you ever go to Verona, there's this little osteria, and osteria basically means like home cooking restaurant. There's this little osteria on the north side of the main central hub of Verona, and it's called Osteria Sottoriva, if I remember correctly. But the dish is called pasta sada de caval, and it's basically stewed horse meat over creamy cheesy polenta. One of the best things I've ever had in my life. It was amazing. And that didn't take me long once I tasted it to get over the fact that it was a horse. But the thing was, in Verona, they had a rather large horse population because of cavalry. Oh no, it's a little bit more inland, so it's not like Verona had a navy; they had a cavalry. So because they had an abundance of horses, you use what you have for food. So that was one thing that I had. You get down to central Italy, Tuscany, Rome. Of course, Roma's. If you're looking for the best carbonara, you're going to find the best carbonara in Roma. But in central Italy, they have a lot of not just pigs, but wild boar. So stewed boar you'll find in central Roma. And then, like I said, you go down to Amalfi Coast, Sorrento, places like that. Seafood is the big thing, but of course, also you add in liquor. That's the limoncello, and like proper limoncello, not like the sweetened crap you get here, but proper limoncello. Ooh, that makes you pucker. It's good. Again, it's a great aperitif to go down after any dinner whatsoever. So yeah, Italy as an overall arching cuisine experience when you're traveling is my favorite. My favorite meal ever is also Italian, but it wasn't in Italy. It was in Spain. It was in Barcelona, Spain, and it was this lady from northern, like Milan region, and when they can't, I guess she met the guy that she was with, I think he was from Madrid or something like that. They moved to Barcelona, and it was this tiny little Italian place, literally almost under a bridge as you're heading towards the Wharf District in Barcelona. And my friend Katie and I were traveling at the time, and this was about day 5, and we had tapas, tapas, tapas. And she's like, "I want pasta tonight." I was like, "Okay." Start looking Google Maps. Where can I find Italian food? And you kind of get reviews here and there, but this one, it was all pretty good reviews. Not a lot, but good reviews. Went there, and we were the only ones in there. They literally treated us like family. It was, I think, 20 or 30 euros per person for a 3-course meal. That was pasta, the salad, and a large meat dish. And it didn't come out fancy. It literally looked like when I'm home cooking. She made it look a little bit better, but when I'm home cooking, it just came out on platters. It didn't look fancy, but it was the best home cooking Italian food I think I'd ever had. I've had a lot of good Italian food, and it was absolutely amazing. And we had like a bottle of Prosecco, and then after that, because it was Spain, they gave us a bottle of cava on the house, and then they sat there and they drank with us and talked with us as we're having this massive feast. I have never been so full. I was so full. Those of you that know me know that I am a karaoke man. We were going to go to do karaoke after that in the warehouse district. There was a bar I found. I said no because when we were done, I was so stuffed. I was like, I was having actually trouble breathing because I was so full. It was such an experience because we were there for 3 hours. I was thinking we are gonna be there for an hour and a half. We got out at like midnight. We got there like a little before 9. It was ridiculous. But yeah, best meal was an Italian meal, Barcelona, Spain. Craziest, most exotic thing I think I've eaten. Ooh, it is very much a good problem to have, guys. Oh, by the way, everybody in the chat, country collectors have arrived. As I said earlier, if you ever want the Mexican videos, check those guys out. They're really cool. Country collectors. Big shout out to you guys because you guys were an inspiration. I told them earlier for me doing my Mexico trip when Japan fell through. So I got a big thank you to you guys for all that. But anyway, craziest thing I've ever eaten. Jesus. Oh gosh. I tried to think. A lot of it honestly has been in the United States. Like I've had snake, gator, you hear in the South. Um, if you've ever actually tried to catch a catfish and what they look like, it's not something you really look at and be like, that looks yummy. Uh, but I would say, ooh, oh, okay. When I was in Isla Mujeres in Mexico, I didn't eat it, but I drank they have bottles of mezcal and tequila where they put at the bottom these worms. And that was weird enough. Drinking out of a glass shot that had a worm, and I was trying to make sure I didn't swallow the worm. I didn't know how I'd feel about that. Then the next shot he gave me, he was like, now you must try with spicy worm dust. So it was the worms dried up, ground up with whatever spice they add to that, pepper, whatever. And it was very spicy. But I was basically drinking worm dust. That was, that went down hard. It was fun, but it went down hard. So that was probably the most exotic drink I've definitely had. I guess you could say the pasta de caval, the horse meat, would be an exotic dish. I'm trying to think of other things because I haven't been to like the South Pacific. I haven't delved fully deep into some of the deeper things. Like I guess you could say like in Mexico, you can get you know you can get like cow tongue or like beef tongue, different organs that are used for meats and tacos and stuff like that. There's some of that stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't think I've been to a place like I haven't done monkey brains yet. Lengua tacos, that's right. I haven't done monkey brains yet, so I haven't tried that. I've had shark before or shark fin soup once before abalone. I don't know if you'd call that exotic. That was actually expensive. I wasn't buying because I was younger back in those days, and that was when Dad took us to a special place in LA. But yeah, I haven't gone to the exotic things. Is more of when you try for me, it's more drinks. You go to Denmark. There's this drink called gammeldansk. You ever try gammeldansk? That puts some hair on your chest, and if you have any throat burns, it just burns them all away. It is nasty. But my own mother, when we were going to, because she had been to Denmark before and she had gammeldansk, and she was like, "You got to try this. It's a great aperitif after dinner one time." And shot it, and I'm like, "Holy crap!" That did not go down very well. So yeah. Or if you go to I actually enjoy this drink, but not a lot of people would. I enjoy in Italy, it's grappa, which is literally you make a liqueur out of the grape stems, not the grapes themselves. It's the grape stems. I think maybe skins as well, but it's the grape stems. And then that's just mean, Heidi. They said it would put hair on Adam's head to try that. Tell me if it works when you guys go. But I would also say in the Balkans, there's this thing called rakia. and that is a it's like a brandy liqueur, but it is a very high alcohol percentage, about anywhere from 35 to 50%. Even higher if you get it distilled like almost like moonshine style, which a lot of people do at home in those areas. But it is made from plums. It is a bit bitter. I actually enjoy the taste, but it's not something that most people think of um, as a good drink because it does burn going down as well. So yeah, most exotic drinks. I think there was also a question to tie into that. Best breweries and best maybe I think there might have been distilleries somewhere or beers and cocktails. Okay, so when you're traveling, particularly Europe, cocktails is kind of hard to actually. I think like when I think of Europe, I think of either the spirits themselves, wine, and beer. When you're talking about cocktails, I've been to actually several bars in Europe throughout the whole. It's kind of funny. I remember one time I was in Spain. I went to this random local bar in Madrid, and I asked for a vodka martini. And this guy looked at me. He said, "Okay, you want vodka martini?" I'm like, "Yeah, vodka martini." And I said, "Dry." It's like vodka martini dry. I don't have dry. I'm like, "You don't? Okay, just do you have any other martini?" He's like, "I have. I take care of you." So he took care of me, and he literally put vodka and martini rosso in, in the glass, and I'm like, wait, wait, what are you doing? It's like that red sweet vermouth, and it wasn't shaken up or anything. And I was like, oh, okay, no. Okay, so what I just want is vodka shaken up, a swish. Well, he didn't have the dry vermouth anyway, but just just the vodka straight up shaken up, and then poured. He's like, why didn't you ask for that? I was like, in the United States, vodka martini. We all know what we're ordering. Um, I would say though, if there was a best place for cocktails that I had, probably New Zealand. Actually, there was this really nice place in Wellington. It was called the Library. It's almost like a speakeasy. Really, it was kind of cool. There wasn't any secret passcode to get, but there's like you go in and up the stairs, and there's basically it's a wall, and then you just push it open, and you go in, and it literally looks like a library with a bar in it. It was super cool. So I would say probably that place is probably the best cocktail place I've ever been to. Brewery wise, excuse me. I've been to the Hofbrauhaus in Munich. That was excellent. That was awesome. I did a video on that one. Definitely check that one out. That was really cool. Um, I don't know if I've been to many breweries. I did go to a sherry winery in Andalusia, down near south of Seville. That was fantastic. That was a place that my dad had gone to before because he randomly ran into the owner on a cruise. My dad has the weirdest luck when it comes to when he travels and meeting people. But yeah, he ran into the owner, went there when they went to Spain. When I finally went to Spain, uh, he told me about it, and I booked a session, a tour, had great time. Learns a lot about Spanish sherry I didn't know, including like older sherries almost tastes like brandy. It loses a lot of that sweetness. It's fantastic. So if you ever go down to it's in Sanlúcar de Barramuda. I have to look up the name of that sherry winery, but I think it's like Hidalgo or something. But it was absolutely fan freaking tastic. Like if you ever get a chance for sherry in Spain, um, try Spanish sherry. It's well worth it, and it's a great aperitivo. Like if you ever go to any kind of tapas, sometimes they'll have like sherry, and you just have an orange slice in there. Great combination. Great way to start off. I think another one would be if distillery wise, of course, Ireland. Been to both of the Jamesons, both in Cork, the old distillery, and the main facility in Dublin. Um, been to the Irish Whiskey Museum, which is not a distillery, but it goes into that's probably my favorite when it comes to drink experiences. The Irish Whiskey Museum, they walk you through all these different rooms, which are like really decked out, really cool when it comes to the history of Irish whiskey. And then you go into the final tasting room. Of course, I got the full package while I was there, so I got all seven tasters, and I tried seven different amazing Irish whiskey. Some of them like 15 like aged. Usually Irish whiskey's not super aged, Scotch is, but the Irish whiskeys that are aged above like 7 years is amazing. And then I went to Murray in Elgin, Scotland, and I went to that distillery. That is really good. That's still one of my favorite scotches. Is their 15-year-old sherry cask? Fantastic, amazing. All right, next one is: do different areas have better times to visit? This is my cousin Aaron. Um, yes, absolutely, and it all depends on what you're looking for. I think I repeated before was when I wanted to do the Christmas stuff. Obviously, going to going to France, Germany for Christmas markets. Uh, Austria, sans the whole COVID stuff. Great. You want to go skiing? Go to the Alps during the wintertime. If you want to during the wintertime, go to warm places. Mexico's what you got. The Caribbean's what you got. You got Costa Rica. I was just at. Like you get down to the coastline. It's warmer there. If you're in San Jose, it's actually kind of like 70 degrees, 60 at night. But when you're on the coastline, it is warmer. In Costa Rica, it's beautiful, fantastic. I prefer Pacific side more than Atlantic or Caribbean side, but that's just a personal preference. But if you're looking for warm, go there. Also, depends on where you go when it comes to southern and northern hemisphere. If you're going to the south hemisphere, just remember the seasons are flipped. Like when I went to New Zealand, I went to New Zealand in March. That was leading into their fall. So when I finally got to the mountainous areas around Queenstown, you actually did start to see fall colors. And I was like, what time of the year is it? Oh yeah, everything's flipped over. So that's something you do have to keep in mind. Every place you go to, it always changes with the seasons. It's just like here in the United States. Best time to visit Virginia or a lot of the Northeast is fall time. As the weather cools down, you get those color of the leaves, but before the winter kicks in. Because nobody wants to be up in the Northeast when the winter kicks in, or the Midwest. Anything above a certain line. It's just really cold. Unless you're going skiing. Then you go to the Rockies and have a good time. And then go somewhere warm again. So, all right. Last two questions that were initially asked, and then I'll kind of, if anybody else had any other questions, be ready to kind of put those down, and I'll answer any of those. Otherwise, this has been a lot of fun so far. Do you stay in hostels, hotels, or with friends? This is my buddy Joe. Mixture of. I've stayed in a few hostels. I'm 35, going on 36 now. My first couple times I went over, I tried the hostel stuff, but I was like, I didn't start traveling overseas until I was right before I turned 30. And hostels in the US barely exist, and a lot of them are not anywhere kept as well as other places in the world. Even the hostels in Mexico, hostels in Costa Rica, hostels in Europe are usually better well kept because they're more used to that style. But I've been to a few hostels, both in a bunk and then also sometimes hostels are actually not a bad place to get your own room. It's cheaper than the hotel rooms. And you still have kind of a little bit of that hostel experience because you have access to everything with the amenities with the hostel. Hotels, yeah, I try and stay away from hotels unless I can find a really good deal. It's hard to find a good hotel that has the amenities that an Airbnb does, or kind of a little bit more of the flexibility that sometimes the hostels have. Because hostels at bare minimum usually have a shared kitchen. A lot of the hotels, they're trying to make money in all ways, particularly if they have a restaurant. They don't have kitchens. It's not like a Marriott residence where it is a hotel, but it is also, you have a full set kitchen. So you just go to the grocery store. So I prefer Airbnbs if I can find them. It is one thing though I will note about Airbnbs, depending on the country. I know that there are slowly becoming laws about limiting that. I remember when my second overseas trip was to Italy, and I remember talking to some locals, a local tour guide, over a bottle of wine one night, and he was telling me about how the Airbnb system, and you'll see this all over the place, is sort of ruining a lot of the central districts. because all these houses and complexes and apartments are being bought up by like corporations and stuff and not being turned into office buildings, but they're being turned into apartments, into sort of Airbnbs or booking.coms, places you can get stuff. And they're actual rooms, they're not just hotels. But it's all tourists now that stay there. Like Florence, most of the people that work in Florence or Florentinians, they live outside the central district. They don't live in the central district anymore. It's all taken over and stayed in um, by tourists. And it's kind of sad because you do lose a lot of that local flair. When they have to come so far in, a lot of times they're not going to bring all that stuff into, a street venue or something like that. If they have to live 20 miles out, it's hard. It's hard to find parking in Florence. You know, Adam, if you guys are still on, you studied in Florence. It's a lot of that central area is all walking. It's there, no cars are allowed. So it's hard to get things in and out if you need to by car. So yeah, I would say I prefer the Airbnbs. Also with friends, yeah. If I have a friend in the area, I always contact them. Number one, to see if they want to meet up, and if they can let me stay. I've gotten lucky sometimes, not so lucky, just with timing, but always try and do that. Yeah. All right. The last one is, where is the place you haven't been that you want to go, but you haven't had the chance? Oh, I've been waiting for this question. Why? Because I think I stated it a little bit earlier. I want to go to Japan. I have twice not been able to go to Japan. First time was really because of COVID, because we had planned, I was going to go with my brother Michael and my sister Alicia, and we were going to go to Japan for 3 weeks and then a week in Sakura. And this was going to be April of like end of March through mid April of 2020, because we were going to be in Japan during the Sakura Festival. It's something I've wanted to do all my life. We didn't get to go because COVID happened. So understandable. But again, like I said, this past winter, I wanted to re-up and go to Japan. And that didn't happen either, because Japan couldn't make up its mind about opening until literally October. And by that time, I had already planned my Mexico trip. So, yeah, Japan is still a place I've always wanted to go to that I haven't been to yet, that I made plans for. You can see how frustrating that is. So, but anyway, that is the end of the questions that I got from a lot of people that I reached out to. I think I've answered a few of the questions that have been put up here. I'll give a couple minutes if anybody else had any. Oh, wait, there is one other question. Oh, from The Wildlife. Are you staying in Bar Harbor again this summer? That's potentially in the works, but I won't be going up there, if I do go up there, till mid-July. So if I go back to Bar Harbor, it'll be about mid-July, and there won't be a whole lot of videos from up there. This particular, I've got I've got like 24 videos of Maine on my channel, but over 2 summers. If I do go back to Bar Harbor, Maine, it's literally going to be around mid-July, and I'd probably do about 2-3 videos, because I'm going to front load a lot of videos. I have June, I'm taking all of off from where I'm working now. I'm actually working on a bunch of Texas videos. So you're going to see a lot of Texas around Austin, a little bit of San Antonio, and a little bit of like the hill countryside and lake country. So I'm going to do a lot of that throughout the spring. And then June, I'm going to take off and I'm going to do a whole West Coast trip: Denver, Seattle, San Francisco, Oakland, Napa, LA, and Vegas. So I'm going to get several videos out of all that in like a month's time, and then kind of slowly spread them out throughout the first half of the summer. And then on my way up to Maine, if I do go, I'm planning on doing Northeast. So Philadelphia, 1 or 2 videos, New York, a couple of videos, Boston, a couple of videos, another maybe Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Portland, food. These are all going to be food tour videos. that should honestly take me through most of the rest of the summer. And then I'll probably do about 2, 3 videos that I did not get to do the last couple summers for whatever reason, and add those to the end of kind of like the transition from the summer before I go where I'm gonna planning to go for next winter, which is gonna be Greece, among other things. So there's the answer to that question. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat when it comes to travel, whether it's my own experiences or just ideas, tips, tricks that I haven't kind of gone over. Or if you've joined late, ask and I'll kind of go over for you as well. So go ahead and take a little sip of my water. If there's any other questions, otherwise, we'll start to close it down. I just looked at the time and I was like, I've been talking for an hour and 41 minutes. Good God. I'm a chatterbox. But I do appreciate everybody that showed up for the live stream that's popped in and out. It's been awesome to hear from you guys. And I do appreciate all the questions from those that I reached out to and answered back to me, and as well as those that I've had questions so far and the support you guys have shown. I definitely appreciate that. This whole YouTube thing has been a lot of fun, and finally got monetized. I guess you could kind of say this is the Q&A for 1,000 subscribers, even though that happened like about a month-ish ago. So just finally, I was just trying to get all the Costa Rica videos out. But yeah, I figured I just finally get to this. And there we go. Okay. Oh, I got Mr. Explorer 875 asks, what's your favorite part of Acadia? Oh, okay. So first and foremost, if you guys haven't been to Acadia National Park in Maine, freaking do it. It's an amazing national park. It's not super big when you compare it to like Yellowstone or Yosemite or some of those places, but there's just so much to do in that little area. So, favorite part of Acadia? Jeez. Interestingly enough, I'd say my favorite part is actually the part of Acadia National Park, which is not on the island itself, but it's on the offshoot that still is within the Acadia bubble, and that is Schoodic Point. That's one of my favorite places throughout the summers that I've been up there, even before I started doing YouTube. I have a day off. I would get off the island, particularly because you work seasonal work. You're working 5-6 days a week, busting your butt for all these rich people, and it's like there's so much going on. Day off, I get off the island. I go to like Schoodic Point or something like that. Schoodic Point is part of Acadia National Park, and it's rugged, rocky coastline. And I've ever since I was a kid, I love kind of just like climbing up and down on the rocks and just the epic scenery, particularly if you actually have like a swell, um, whether it's a storm off the coast or you have the high tide coming in, just get these waves that just like crash on the rocks. That's probably my personal favorite. That and the Hidden Hunters Beach, which I've been going to the last couple of years. I finally found that place out. Hunters Beach, I put that in my one of my 4th of July weekend videos that I did last year. I'm not supposed to say where exactly it is. It's on the south side of the east side. So you guys have to go on a little scavenger hunt to find Hunter's Beach in Acadia National Park. But it's this secluded pebble beach that's got this beautiful cove, and it goes directly into the Atlantic. And it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And usually it's more locals that know that place, so you don't get a lot of people out there. So if you can find it, points for you. Kudos. All right. Are there any other questions? Let me know. Again, I do appreciate you guys coming out tonight, particularly many of y'all that I know that have actually sat here for the entire hour and 44 minutes. Dear God, thank you so much. You're probably like, now when he's done, we'll talk to him for another 2-3 months. It's like he talked my damn ear off. So, so you have been to Hunter's Beach. Well done, Mr. Explorer 875. Yeah, Hunter's Beach when you're at Acadia National Park is fantastic. I say another one would be Little Long Pond. I like Little Long Pond because it's a nice little pond that goes up to. It's actually not even a little pond. It's actually rather big, but it goes up to basically the ocean. You have the road that kind of connects as a bridge in between it, but the pond itself has this epic backdrop of the mountains with the trees, and during the fall time, it's absolutely fantastic. And it's got this little boathouse sort of out in the middle of it where you can kind of it's like it's one of the most photographed areas of Acadia National Park is Little Long Pond and the boathouse. That's definitely it. And those are see all the places that I talk about are like not on the big tourist docket. You go to Acadia National Park, tourist docket is going to be Bar Harbor, Cadillac Mountain, Sand Beach, Thunder Hole. So when you find those kind of like hidden gems, it's a little bit quieter. That's really what you want to go to. Even when you climb the mountains, like everybody will climb Door Mountain, Cadillac Mountain, Mount Champlain. Me, I like the slightly smaller mountains over on the west side of the island because we call that the quiet side. Beach Mountain is really cool because that one has the fire tower up there, and then like some of the best kind of like scenes of the fjord is from the top of like Saint Saviour on Acadia Mountain. It's actually really cool as well. So, any other questions? Give it a moment. If not, I think I might sign off, guys. It's been about, about an hour and 45, 46 minutes. I do appreciate everybody that stayed through the whole. Otherwise, everybody that also jumped in, thank you so much for joining me here today on this first live stream that I've ever done. I might plan to do another one on a different topic in the future. So we'll kind of see where things go. But I appreciate you guys so very much. Definitely, if you guys haven't already subscribed, I think most people that have watched have already subscribed. But if you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys next time in my next video. Keep an eye out. It's my next. It's my first of the Texas series, Sherwood Forest Fair, coming out next Sunday at about 9 or 10 a.m. I haven't decided on what a.m. But next Sunday morning, Sherwood Forest Fair coming up straight to you. Watch it. I'll be in costume. Anyway, guys, TV, peace out. Have a great night. That usually works a little bit better because I can cut, but I couldn't cut and end stream at the same time. Sorry about that. And